Well, hey there. Just before we jump into today's episode, I want to tell you about our friends over at MAI Fulfillment. Now, they really are a smarter 3PL partner for e-commerce brands that need more than just basic pick, pack, and ship. Now, MAI handles the whole picture. Like we're talking D2C fulfillment, B2B distribution, retail-ready shipping, and inventory management. Like they handle returns and even a lot of value-added services, all backed by technology that keeps your orders, your inventory, and most importantly, your sales channels all connected. Now, here's what makes them different. With MAI, you're not just getting lost inside some massive, inflexible network. Like you get real systems with real visibility. And most importantly, there's real people who actually know your business. Like their warehouse team is actual MAI employees. Like they're not outsourced labor. And that means more control, like better accountability overall, and really a team that is trained to protect your accuracy, speed, and like most importantly, helping build your customer experience. And so whether you're scaling on Shopify or you're looking to expand into wholesale, managing maybe even a seasonal spike, or you're just kind of tired of feeling like another account number, maybe in a big box 3PL, MAI really does give you the structure to grow without losing control. So it's time to actually turn your fulfillment into a growth engine, not a bottleneck. And you can learn more about them and their process and their systems over at maifulfillment.com. That's maifulfillment.com. All right, let's jump into today's episode. All right, well, welcome back to E-commerce Fastlane. I'm your host, Steve. Now, today's conversation really is going to be all about content-led growth and like why your product content, in my opinion, is kind of deciding, whether like in these AI systems are actually recommending your product or maybe are passing you by. And like, so if you're like selling in more than one place, which kind of most of us are right now, like your product content, I believe is kind of scattered across a lot of different areas right now. Think about maybe spreadsheets, potentially in browser tabs, which is kind of crazy. And sometimes even like in Dropbox folders or wherever. And I think the problem with that is that my guest has actually solved that. His name is Morten, and he's the founder of a company called Plytix. That's Plytix. And literally, he spent so many years inside Google, and then he learned a lot about what it means to build a product content software. And then almost no one thought about kind of where commerce was kind of headed. But now Plytix really now serves brands. I think, gosh, I don't know how many markets they're in, but like, 29 different markets they're all connected to now. And I'm really hoping that by the end of today's episode that we're going to learn a lot about like what is content-led growth. Like actually, I like to figure that out. What it means kind of in plain language, I'm hoping. And I'm hoping to understand about what Morten believes is happening right now and in the very near future with AI agents and how they're handling these smaller and kind of edge brands, maybe that don't really have large ad budgets, but like how do they get discovered and how are they allowing other agents to buy from other agents? The whole idea, I believe, is just getting your product ready. And I think that's one of the advantages of Plytix. So let's welcome Morten to the show.
Oh, thank you, Steve. You did the entire episode for me there.
I know, right? Tiny bit of research for recording, but it's interesting. We had one of your partners on previously, and we talked a lot about the Plytix as a platform. I'll link that in the show notes. I think we got into deep about just the platform itself and its history. It really was firmly entrenched in the enterprise market, but now they're firmly in the mid market now, and they really are helping Shopify businesses right now from a PIM perspective, which is product information management, as people that don't know, or the DAM side of it, which is digital asset management and kind of a source of truth for content. We're pivoting a bit now over to more what's happening right now, as you coined it, this kind of content-led growth and kind of what's happening with agentic commerce, because it's an incredibly hot topic right now. So can you take me back a little bit? Like you spent these years inside Google and you built an agency, and then I think you're making a bet right now on where the future is headed. So can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what led us to maybe chatting today?
Yeah, well, first of all, when I started Plytix back in the day, I had no idea we would end up where we are. Like this is not our first pivot, so to speak. To be honest, I didn't even know what our PIM was when we started Plytix.
Okay.
Fun story, Steve. The name Plytix actually comes from product analytics. And the first concept of Plytix was actually to facilitate the exchange between brands and retailers when it comes to product images and product information, right, so that we could build that bridge between them so that brands could see how end users interact with the products.
Right.
Obviously, we didn't get a lot of traction on that, and that's where we discovered the big need in the market for for democratizing PIM, as I like to call it, basically making PIM available for the little guys. You're absolutely right. I've been in the e-commerce for a long time, in Google, then in an agency. But it would be a lie to say that I started Plytix with the idea of what it is today.
Right.
But that's the fun of building software, I guess. You never know where it takes you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I love it. And so let's talk about you, and I believe you made a case that maybe these enterprise retailers, they are growing a lot faster maybe than some smaller brands. And you believe, from what I read on LinkedIn, your concept is that you feel that there potentially is a technology gap between what enterprise retailers have available to them versus what the mid-market and early stage brands are. Can you talk about that gap? Is that gap closing, or is it widening right now, enterprise versus mid-market and then the early stage brands?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. I think what I was once quoted for was some insights and stats about how big retail brands were growing 6 times faster than the little guys, and basically just occupy all prime real estate on all the marketplaces and search engines, and it was very hard for the smaller and the little guys to break through that ceiling. And there's many reasons why these big brands have a leverage. One is obviously economy of scale in purchasing power. Right. But another thing was software. They had access to enterprise software that was very powerful, that gave them an unfair competitive advantage. And I think what we saw was, fair enough that you have economy of scale, but you shouldn't need to be powerful technology shouldn't only be accessible for big enterprise brands. So I think our whole notion since we started Plytix was we want to democratize at least technology, because there's no difference between a little brand and a small brand in terms of access to technology, only how much they can pay. But if you think about it, technology costs the same whether you build it for small businesses or big. Right. So that whole thing of just making things super expensive because some software companies could maximize profit. Right. We never liked that. And as a byproduct of that philosophy, we've always been known as the PIM for SMBs, the PIM for the little guys. Which is not true. We have many enterprise brands. All we said was we want to democratize our technology, so everybody, big or small, can access it without any discrimination.
What's interesting though is from what I see, and I get DM'd a lot by different people on social and stuff, and they're saying, I think a lot of founders more are worried. They feel that the AI shopping kind of thing that's happening, and you said it well, is that you believe that maybe in some cases it really is in larger brands right now, just because they have economies of scale, like you said, or they just have access to technology that's very enterprise and expensive that maybe only large players can actually afford it. But I think from what I understand, you actually argue quite a bit different than that. And you feel that these AI agents actually don't have a preference towards who they're recommending. And I think it really comes down to your software kind of leveling the playing field, so to speak, for mid-market and early stage brands, that enterprises had that luxury. And Plytix actually takes care of that. So can you talk about that agentic landscape and kind of how you're now readying, source of truth, but readying the data so that it can be discovered in agentic systems for purchasing and research and citations and these sorts of things?
Yeah, that's actually a very good topic, and very close to my heart.
It's a hot topic.
Because I did say that I believe that the best thing that could happen for small or medium-sized brands was the whole agentic. Yeah. And But it doesn't mean that now with AI, that performance gap is closing. It just means in one particular area, which is, in my opinion, the product discovery. Because for a long time, there used to be this, we used to have this joke in Google that the best place to hide a dead body is on page 2 on Google because nobody goes there. And so you can imagine if what was it, like 90% of all products that are bought on page 1 on Amazon and page 1 on Google.
Yeah, right.
Whoever occupies page 1 will have a sale. Now, as a consumer, I don't want to go to page 7 either, but I'm also annoyed about how, like, every time I want new shoes, I only get exposed to the same 4 brands.
Right.
And I think that is what AI is really democratizing. Because now, an AI don't care about going to page 7. It just cares about giving you the best product.
Right.
So when I start having a conversation with whatever it is, Claude or ChatGPT, about, hey, listen, I need to buy this new tent for my camping. I'm going to have a conversation with everything I need.
Right.
It will, to a better extent, find the right product for me that I can do myself. And that might be the perfect product out there. And back in the days, I would never get exposed to it because I didn't know how to put together the right string of keywords.
Right.
And the little brand couldn't bet on more generic keywords. And it all came down to one thing. It's like occupy Google, occupy the major, marketplaces, and then you're set. But it just made it so hard for the little guys to get eyeballs. And I believe that is somewhat, being democratized with AI because it's a different way of discovering.
Yeah. What's interesting, and I think of all the years, lots of people that are listening or watching right now, they've spent all this time with SEO, the search engine optimization, and doing whatever it takes to be like, on the first page of Google, wherever possible. And they know that over the years, that's been like the highest ROI. So the energy that goes into content production, link building, all of these sort of things to improve your domain authority. This is like, incredibly important. No wonder Reddit comes up. And I know there's a relationship between, OpenAI and Reddit, and that's why a lot of the results are being displayed accordingly. But there's a certain baked in trust. Part of it is because Reddit has a really high domain authority. And because it's more of a as we know, people are publishing in there quite a bit, and they're very strict on their spam policies, and they just want honest conversations about product. No wonder things are being revealed in there, or things like listicles. These are like these things are being ingested by these AI systems now, and then are then being displayed accordingly during research. And so, what's your thought about people that have put all this energy now, or in the past, have put energy into the SEO world? Does it bleed over a bit to these agentic systems, and kind of like, and how Plytix is kind of thinking about, this kind of like content-led growth concept? Is it similar or is it different? Like, is there still benefits to having high-ranking SEO value to these agentic systems? I just want to hear your mindset around it, because you're definitely front lines with all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe now is a good time to introduce the concept of, content-led growth. And listen, I can say whatever because we made up the concept, so to speak. But if you think about it, we all first got familiar with SEO, like optimizing for search engines. And then a lot of product searches moved onto the different marketplaces. And then another topic came up, like PLO, product listing optimization.
Yeah.
And then, you also had to optimize for conversion. So you had CRO. So you have all these different acronyms.
Yep.
So basically for us, content-led growth is just the umbrella term for all of those things.
Okay.
Like, do you need to completely abandon SEO because now there's this thing called agentic commerce? Absolutely not. That would be like a physical store saying we're shutting down our physical stores only to go online back in the day.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, just to go back to when e-commerce came about, everybody thought that, physical shopping would die completely, but it didn't. It actually grew, but the total retail market grew. So what we are preaching is do not abandon and then go all in on the next 3-letter acronym. Think about what is your strategy, and each strategy will be made up of different, tactics. What I call it.
I see.
Tactic is not a strategy.
Right.
And as you can see, some brands, they're only on Amazon. I read that 2 years ago, like 50% of new retail brands, they were like born, to not even have a website. They were just born directly on marketplaces.
Right.
So whatever your go-to-market strategy is, and whatever 3-letter acronyms, tactics that strategy, is made up of, you should not abandon that. But you should definitely think about how product discovery, as we know it, is changing.
Mm-hmm.
We are now having conversations. So whether you do shop on the different marketplaces or through ChatGPT or directly on Google, you would want to have maximum exposure for your product channel. So I wouldn't say forget everything you thought you knew about SEO, because it doesn't work anymore. It does.
Right.
But it's also true that a lot of product discovery has now moved to LLMs.
Right. So I guess another acronym that we'll throw into the mix here is just kind of like AI visibility. I see so many agencies now that have, I guess, pivoted a little bit of their SEO marketing strategy around like AI visibility, and they're running quick visibility audits just, with some generic queries, and let's just see where you come up instead of keywords. Now these are more long tail, kind of like, what are the best shoes under $200 for someone with a high arch? Weird question, but that's the niche that you want to be in and come up in. And I think that's knowing your market. And I think, we should talk a little bit about that, because I think that's one of the advantages of kind of what you're doing with this content-led growth, is the fact that we're thinking about the customer in the end. It's just like, and how do these systems and marketplaces and the Shopify store, how do, from the organic perspective, how do these all work together? And so can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's the big thing. Like, if you're in these different marketplaces and you truly are multi-channel retailer, you've got retail, you've got your online store, you have your Amazon shop, you could be on Etsy. There needs to be a source of truth. That's where Plytix is. And so knowing that that's the source of truth, it's just like, what's the thought process around getting that data organized so that it is agentic friendly, it is marketplace friendly? Because I think that's the challenge that a lot of people have right now, is they especially people that are listening right now, they're on these things, they're doing decent in their Shopify store and their Amazon shop with this, these baked in audiences, but they also feel that maybe they're not building their competitive moat right now because they have too many separate systems and too many data pools that don't really talk to each other or don't know the source of, well, what's working over here? Should I, if I modify my product listings better on Amazon, how do I do that? And does that bleed over into the SEO part of it, or how I'm being cited on large language models? So I know there's a lot of questions here, but I'm just curious so I guess to summarize it, I'm asking more about, okay, there's many multi-channel retailers right now with separate systems. What do you recommend they do today so that they are kind of agentic friendly, or so they continue to get their organic reach and they continue to kind of growing and expanding themselves on these marketplaces?
Yeah, it's
a big question.
Yeah, that is the multi-million question, I guess.
Yeah.
But first, let's look at how do you get ready for agentic commerce?
Yeah.
First, let's talk about what is agentic commerce, because I think many people believe that agentic commerce is, some sort of AI chat interface doing the shopping for you. And I believe that might happen, but I also see a future where it's not about the transaction. It's about the discoverability of the product. And because if you're going towards a world where you just have like let's call it a shopping GPT, and then that does all your shopping for you. Do you think Amazon would be particularly happy with that? Do you think some of the biggest, there will be a big push from these big players to not have that? So what we're seeing is, and Alibaba is doing a great job with that. They're doing their own agentic commerce on top of their platform. I think Amazon's going to do the same. So for me, agentic shopping is not whether or not there's going to be a winner-takes-all chat interface that will do all the transactions for you, but more you'll see the behavior you will have with that chat integrated in all your platforms. Now, that is my prediction. But it could also be that we go towards, a winner-takes-all shopping chat. But whatever it is, Steve, the fundamentals of how you want to optimize your product content is the same.
Right.
We want to think about how people are interacting with these chats in order to discover products.
Right.
So think about, because you said to yourself, if you want to buy sneakers for under $200, you could actually do that through filtering and whatnot on different listicles.
Right.
Now you just do it directly in a chat.
Right.
But same way you're structuring your data in order for it to appear in certain filters are the same. It's the same logic.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is not only knowing what works on each of these channels and then finding the time to optimize it. It's also realizing that if you start with your base content and then you say you add Amazon and then you start tweaking your content, you create a new branch. And for every channel you have and for every market you're on, you're creating multiple different branches and maintaining, the accuracy of all that information. Yeah. Because it might be that you just, you update a product and the price is changed or the color is changed. But now you have to remember all the different variations of that core content, all that proliferated content everywhere. So it's not only about knowing what works on Amazon and then making the Amazon branch once. And by the way, that is forever changing. It's also maintaining all these branches of content accurate whenever you have changes to your core catalog, whether it's an attribute change or launching a new product or whatnot. And that is what becomes very, very difficult. And I think many people in e-commerce, they wish they could go back to the old days where it was just about SEO.
Right.
I don't think that's where we're going. I think on top of everything we have, we also have to think about, enriching our content with FAQs and use cases and more tables, so that it is easier for an AI, either on one of the popular ones or integrate directly into an Amazon. But either way, it needs to be digestible for these, and that is a different ballgame. Mm-hmm. Just need to throw away the baby with the bathwater and just abandon all the SEO tactics. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, when we think about like a brand that may want to expand into a new channel, I think that's where Plytix kind of fits into the mix, which is interesting because you are the source of truth and you have, let's say like the primary connection is through Shopify, let's say, because that's where, I guess in a lot of cases, that's kind of the starting point for a lot of people is building their Shopify store and they start expanding out into other marketplaces. But then there's also this thought process too, when you think about content-led growth about, well, what happens when I expand out into other countries? And there is and then we start thinking about the language side of it or just like localized currencies. And like, there's a lot of things that happen that allow, which is typically in a lot of cases was only workable through enterprise companies that could actually, get access to a lot of these cross-border systems. And, it can get quite complicated. And I know Shopify has really helped a lot with Shopify Markets and with their connection to Global E. I think that's the one connection I think is quite helpful for American brands to connect to Canada and around the world from a duty and tax compliance. But I also feel that it's interesting as like, how do you show your site in other markets and other languages? And like, what is the source of truth for that product data? Because you still want to come up in these agentic systems and you still want to come up in organic search in like, the Italian Google. What's your thought about all of that? I know it's a complex topic when you start talking about internationalization, but how does Plytix look at that? And like, do you think there's an agentic or a content-led system around the internationalization that brands are working on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about, if you go back to the analogy of saying, okay, you have your core content, and then from there you have different adaptation.
Right.
for us, we think about, okay, you have the core content, and then you have what we call the market adaptation. Now you go in and adapt it to the different languages. And then for each market, you look at what are the different channels you're on. And then for each market, you have further proliferation. So if you think about that tree just growing into something very complex and very difficult to manage, and you say that Shopify has made it a lot easier with markets, and that is true. It's easier now to expand into other markets and be able to sell and be able to take payments and stuff.
Right.
But you still have to maintain your product content. You still have to optimize it. And as you said, it's localization is not just translation.
Yeah.
It's also like currency you mentioned, but what about units, like centimeters, ounces, and liters, and all of that? That everything has to change. And it's true that the technology has been there for you to set up these rules and automations, but they can only take you so far.
Right.
You will still see how when automation starts breaking, where you have to set up very complicated rules in order to achieve somewhat automated output.
Right.
And then it doesn't automatically change if something in the core changes. So I think the mix of automations and with the AI, it's going to be a lot easier to manage all of that without losing your head in the process.
Right.
And this is, you talked about how we're doing a pivot, and I think more than a pivot, I think we are evolving, because we need a PIM that is just functioning as a static repository of your product content.
Right.
You would want that repository to also enrich and make your product content complete and make it optimized for different markets and make it optimized for different channels. Now with AI, we can layer that on top, so you can actually get the best of you can maximize your product discoverability on every market, on every channel. And I think that is what we are excited about. And we are so focused on that part that I can't disagree with you. It looks like we're pivoting into becoming this AI for product content, but it's still built on the core premise that we are a PIM. And I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch, but I am genuinely excited about, what AI has done, because that combined with automation now means that you don't have to prioritize which channels or which market you want to be on. And you don't have to make the compromise that, hey, listen, I know what the best practices are for Google Shopping, but who's got the time to go through and set up use cases and FAQs? Now you can do that in bulk if you have the right system and an AI on top. And when I say the right system, I mean, it's not about asking ChatGPT to fill in a spreadsheet. You'll get tired after 50 products. I'm talking about deploying powerful models on top of a very structured, database of product content.
Mm-hmm. You know what it is, and I think, and I know Claude and ChatGPT and that they are getting better about persistent memory and having context. And so I think all of that's important. But I think that's one advantage, to be quite honest with you, about Plytix itself, is the fact that it has all of that baked in. Plytix is the source of truth for your product data. That is true. There's no doubting it. Even G2, you have a high rating on G2. The market loves Plytix. And I agree with you. It's not a pitch today about it, because today's more of an education around, okay, wait a second. Where are we headed? And that's why I think this whole concept of like content-led growth and these agentic systems, it's like, are you readying yourself today for where things are headed? Clearly, with all the investments that are happening around the world right now with these server farms. I mean, there's one here in Alberta that just got, I think Meta just spent $9 billion and putting up, this massive AI server farm here in a neighboring province. And there's lots of case studies around that. There's and then the memory shortage that's happening and the memory pricing that's happening. So clearly all of these things are happening, and people, even knowledge workers like myself, we can see that we get more work done better. And so I think that's where Plytix kind of fits into the mix. But the future, like, so you're suggesting that, those that might be listening today, like, hey, I have a lot of disparate systems set up here, different spreadsheets, different processes, and maybe their life can be better. Maybe there is a better way. And it's just like, well, and it comes down to your concept of this, content-led growth. And then having a source of truth, and then knowing that, and I've mentioned this before in a previous episode, this kind of crawl, walk, run, kind of an acronym. Like, you don't have to get all involved in the full system. It's all of a sudden, well, where do you believe your shortcomings are today? Well, I'm not coming up in, when someone's researching my product right now on Claude. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about that. And your system allows you to set up your product data accordingly so that it has FAQs and so that it has proper schema. So the product details pages are actually correct and your collection pages are correct. So there's a lot going on here. And I think that's where Plytix kind of fits into the mix. It's not just, are you ready for a DAM? Are you ready for a PIM? Are you ready for, are you connecting to all these third-party listing tools? Yes, Plytix can do all of that. But it's just like, where are you today in your business and where do you believe some of your shortcomings are? There's ways of turning on that part of it or using that part of Plytix to make all this magic happen. So just curious on your feedback about, like, where do you start where you're at? And then, what's the hand holding or what's the process to kind of use the platform so that you become kind of like agentic friendly, because this future is coming. There's no doubt about it. I'm not sure about app to app buying, but the discoverability is clearly happening now. Where it links to make the purchase is a separate conversation. There's been Google's doing their thing and Apple's doing their thing. Everybody's doing their own thing, trying to figure it out. We don't know where the payment gateway is going to land. But at the end of the day, you still want to be discoverable outside of maybe Google organic. So just curious on your feedback on all of this.
Yeah. And I think the interesting part here is we don't know where it's going to land, where the transaction is going to happen.
Yeah.
But does it matter? What you want is for people to find your product. It doesn't matter at that point where they're going to do the payment, or at least that's not the part of agentic we want to solve. We want to make sure that if you sell products, that you get in front of your customers.
Right.
And that's the most part. Whether or not that discoverability is happening on a chatbot or directly in a marketplace, that doesn't really matter, because the fundamentals on how to optimize your product and structuring your product content is the same. And you said something very interesting there. It's like, but we were, what was it that you were saying about how people should optimize their
like their product details pages or their collection pages.
Yeah, exactly. And remember that it used to be that we had a very, siloed way of working. Like you had an SEO specialist, he had his own spreadsheet. Yeah. And then you had an e-commerce manager who only works in Shopify, and then somebody on Amazon was only doing that. And there you have like multiple different tools with that all has product content and product information. But if you ask anyone, can I get all the information? There's no one who knows where you can find all the information, because there's probably information on the desktop of the Amazon dude that nobody else has access to. And if you ask them, okay, so there are 4 different prices here, which one is the right one? Again, they come up short. Now, back in the days, it was already getting very difficult in 2015 and beyond, where things started to proliferate in e-commerce, where it was more about optimizing for marketplaces than only for your web store. Already then we saw how it became very difficult when everybody was working in their own system. But that is now completely accelerating with the AI and how fast everything is happening.
Right.
So at least back in the days, you could do some patchwork with the feed management tool and some rules, and sometimes the output wasn't great, but hey, what are you gonna do? It was automatic, and at least it was it got it somewhat optimized. But now with AI and the tools available, you can actually say, okay, let's deploy automations and AI to actually create really killer content that is optimized for each of these, and make sure that they are all synchronized and accurate.
Right.
But you can only do that if you start with the foundation. You just need to start with core. You need to start with a database, whether that's Plytix or somewhere else. But before you start thinking about setting up the rules and the agents that can optimize for SEO and Amazon and localize to Spanish, it all starts with a very strong foundation. So my recommendation is obviously to buy Plytix, but if not Plytix, really think about building the foundation first.
Yeah.
And then layer all the things on top of it. Because the cool thing is, with AI and automations, you don't have to do it. You actually don't have to sit there and type all the things. You can set all that up agentically.
Yeah.
It is a big upfront investment, but an investment I think everybody should be thinking about. Because once you have that architecture, the world can throw anything at you. Like, now it's FAQs. Now Amazon changes algorithm. Now it's not important to have long with 200 characters anymore. Now it's all about FAQs. And you can adapt to that very quickly. But you cannot do that without that architecture that is built on a strong foundation.
Yeah. It is amazing. Like I said, back to my comment about context aware, and having a system that understands it. And I think about this persistent memory, I think is incredibly important. I think that's, when you have an instance of Plytix spun up on your particular brand, once again, you don't have to use the whole platform. This crawl, walk, run is kind of like really the way I believe that, brands need to adopt, whatever technology is that you're, trying to use or see, or that there's value in it. But when I think about, your agent, literally how the AI content agent inside Plytix, it actually understands and knows your business individually. This is not a generic. This is like, it's ingesting your product data from Shopify, and then, which is an interesting starting point through, the associated Shopify app, but it doesn't just end there. It continues on to other systems, the localization that we talked about. There's so much to it. And I think, and the nice thing about Plytix, once again, I'm not trying to pitch the product because I'm more here about more on the education side, but it is incredibly affordable. If you actually were to add up the mind share of having to have all these separate systems running to try to keep track of what's going on in Amazon. And there's lots of different point solutions out there that can help manage product data in different silos. I'm suggesting there's a better way. And it's part of this whole persistent memory and having a source of truth. So it comes back to the PIM concept again, but the idea is that things are happening now. There is, I don't want to call it a pivot, but there's a move now towards how can I be agentic ready and how can I be discoverable in these systems, because it is growing. Shopify has even brought up some research recently about, brands that are being discovered now and what that looks like from an agentic referenced transaction, like a conversion. They're logging them all now, and they're knowing, like, I don't know, it's 3 to 5% now of conversions are happening because of a touch point, thanks to an agentic system, being ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. And so that's interesting to me that's where Plytix is kind of like, that's where your flag is in the sand right now. It's just like there's, 5 million Shopify brands out there that are trying to figure out, maybe 20,000 on the plus side, which is the mid-market to enterprise. And there's a lot of people in the mid-market right now that just they know they want to be discovered and all they're doing is SEO, but they have too many systems going on right now where, we got to think about the source of truth and then how do we interact with these systems. And you guys and continue to think about where can we be so that we are agentic ready today, and how can we make sure that we become discoverable, and then, once again, source of truth from within your platform. So I think that's pretty exciting where we are today and where we're headed.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about it this way. I often get the questions like when I boldly state that Plytix AI will be better at ChatGPT and even Claude when it comes to producing product content. And they will like, how can you say that? Like, these are like massive companies. Like, it's true, when it comes to blueberry muffins, we're not very good at producing a recipe. But we're using their models. Like, we're using the Claude and the OpenAI model, and we toggle between which model is the best for any given purpose.
Right.
What they don't have is we have all the context about the product. We know how you typically write a description, how you typically think. But on top of that, we keep training our model specifically on best practices for different e-commerce channels. So that combined with the fact that we are using the existing models that are already ahead of the curve means that of course we'll be better at enriching your product content. Of course Plytix will be better at optimizing your content for different platforms. It's not even a bold statement. It's just the fact we have the context of your entire catalog, plus if you upload them, all your branding and content guidelines, plus a dedicated e-commerce team that is updating and constantly refining our e-commerce best practices.
Right.
And that's what we want to give people. Him to store the information, but actually a tool that is already trained on e-commerce. All it needs is your guidelines and product catalog, and that combined should create the best AI out there for producing and enriching product content.
Yeah. I agree with you what you're saying too, because I think, and you know, your company's not alone where you're using these frontier models, being an OpenAI or being Anthropic or even Google Gemini, and even there's some fantastic open source models that are available too that do incredible work. And it's things, so knowing that you have access to these frontier models as part of the system, your competitive advantage, Plytix as a company, from my opinion, or at least from my lens, is the fact that you have a really good harness. Your harness is you have access to data that, you know, and a source of truth, but your harness on top of that is your ongoing research, from e-commerce perspective, best practices. You also, have some major enterprise players, and anonymously, you're able to anonymize, data and what does great look like to them and what are they doing. And then all of a sudden there's ways of like, wow, okay, so Reebok is doing this or someone else is doing that. And all of a sudden, even though that's not public knowledge, but there's ways to hypothesize what success and what great looks like. And knowing that, it's just that's why that's an iterative process. Like, I don't think anybody's really completely figured it out. You know, we talked about the SEO thing of it. We don't want to give up SEO because we still feel like, I know Google for sure is scraping the top 10 and putting those into AI overviews. We understand that. We also know that's their learning algorithm for Gemini. We understand that. So if you go to Gemini and search for stuff, you're kind of getting the top 10 in Google-ish. But not the other systems, not in Claude and not in ChatGPT. You're not. They're not crawling Google. They're doing their own. And that's the whole benefits, I think, of having Plytix and this kind of agentic systems and having a source of truth for your data is because these systems are more apt to find you because you're readying your data correctly for ingestion for these systems, not Google's organic placement scraped, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. And okay. I think you said something really important there. It does become this beast that compounds on itself. Like, the more brands we get on board, the more insights we get, the more that is being used to, self-learn.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't mean that the result of the product content, like the throughput, the throughput of our engine is the same for everyone, because
right.
That is where you come in and upload your own thing, and that's where we want to get to. But that being said, you can also accomplish this without Plytix. Start with any database structure, and then you just need a team to constantly update and optimize the best practices, and then you need to set up all the agents that can do all the different tasks. I'm not saying you need a system for Plytix, but
right.
Again, this is where our commitment to democratizing software comes in. If you don't have, the capacity to hire people for that entire engine, we also made sure that you can get those benefits and at a fair price.
Yeah, 100%. So what do you believe some of the next steps are? Because clearly there's people, this show has a lot of different types of founders or marketers, and even some agency partners that are listening right now that do done-for-you services, which I think is another whole separate conversation probably for another podcast. So I think there's some agency partners that are like, hey, wait a second, could I have a done-for-you service that is a source of truth for my ongoing retainer clients, or I'm doing marketing and I'm helping them for their AI discoverability and reading your data. I think that's a whole separate conversation, but I'm certainly I'm going to throw that out there that it's probably pretty easy to go to Plytix.com and kind of reach out to the sales team and saying, hey, I'm an agency with 50 accounts and I'm thinking about the possibility of having Plytix as a source of truth for all of my clients, because that's a value add that I want to give. I don't even have to tell people that I'm using Plytix. It's just the results in the end are what makes it powerful for them as the agency partner. But for those that are listening that are like, let's say you're in the mid-market right now, and I think, and I think that's kind of where the Shopify app kind of fits into into this play. Like, what do you think our takeaway should be, and then potential next steps for those that are listening today, so that we all know, I believe, based on the DMs I'm getting, that, hey, you know what? We need to be discoverable during the research phase right now. Because I think that's where we're kind of headed right now, is research phase, where the transaction happens, where you link to, if you're buying from within app or linking out, and where that transaction happens, that's evolving. But the discoverability and the research phase from within these agentic systems is incredibly important. It's not scraping Google top 10. It's other systems and processes, and that's where your source of truth comes in. So I just want to know, I'm going to pass the baton to you. What do you believe some next steps are for those that are listening that want to learn more about Plytix and more about this whole system and process you have now?
Every business is different and they have different priorities. But I do believe that whether agentic commerce is this, thing that we all think that is all about transactions, or if it's simply just agentic discoverability, I do recommend that everybody makes that at least top 3 of their priorities. And I know that there are agencies that are now like betting heavily on this and helping their existing and new clients transition into another tactic. Let's call it agentic commerce or agentic discoverability, without trying to make too many predictions that I might have to regret later. I do believe that you should rethink about discoverability, because that is not the future. It's happening now.
Okay.
And structuring your data, and there's a lot of best practices out there. We wrote some white papers and best practices about how to optimize your product content for discoverability. Mm-hmm. But we're not the only ones. And I think it's still the Wild West, and the dust has to settle before there is like some very clear guidelines. Mm-hmm. But we definitely get to test this, with hundreds of thousands of brands and test different best practices. And many of the agencies that we collaborate very closely with, they do the same. So I would say that would be a good place to start, trying to look for that, these content and best practices. It's still an opportunity. Good luck trying to rank number 1 on Google if you're a new brand. This is like early days of Google AdWords and Google search. You invest now, there might be a period before the rest of the market picks up. So soon it'll be something you have to do just to catch up. But now it might be an opportunity to look right on.
So what's great, though, is you have to do a lot of research. Just kind of to wrap up, there is a lot of great research that's on your website, too. And so I'll send people over to Plytix.com. There's a lot of ebooks. There's a lot of guides on there. You have, I think there's even some playbooks and stuff like that that have been put together, very point solutions, saying, hey, if you're having a challenge with this, learn about it here. So I think there's this learning part. If you're in really, really, really early days of your business right now, I think it's just getting your head wrapped around building your business acumen, that you need to think about AI as it relates to discoverability, and then what the future holds from that point. I agree with you that it's happening now. People are definitely researching through AI systems right now before making a product decision. I use the AI system for my vacation. Probably spent 20 hours setting up a project and going through people. And maybe I'm more on the leading edge of like AI adoption than maybe the average consumer, but people are using ChatGPT and Claude. I mean, Claude's the number 1 app on the Apple App Store. People clearly are using it. They love it. Now, it's not just a coding tool. There's a lot of people that are using it like as a consumer product for research. And so like, if you're not coming up, that's why there's even pop-up companies now that are out now that are just tracking queries in these AI systems right now to see if you're coming up for discoverability. They're not giving you the answer to how to fix it, but they're letting you know where you are. Best shoes, like I said, best shoes under $200 with a high arch. Do you come up in those systems? You can put that query into these, modified kind of like SEO tools. They don't tell you how to fix it. They just tell you that you don't come up there, or you might want to write a new piece of content around it. Well, that's not necessarily the answer, right?
Yeah, it's like, you're not showing up, but your competitors are.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, just like, what's the answer here? Well, the answer is the source of truth through a system like what Plytix is offering, right? So, I think the education is here. So I'll make sure all these go into the show notes. This has really, honestly been really educational. Thank you for sharing. I mean, you can see now, I don't really show this very often, but because I don't record video often, but page 2 of notes. I feel very blessed to have the opportunity to chat with you today, because I think anybody that's watching or listening, it's a life of learning right now. We don't necessarily know the outcome, but it's all about a journey right now that all of us are on, both as consumers researching and making buying decisions, not just Google organic listings, and then knowing this research, making some decisions, and how do you buy these products. And I think that's part of how Plytix kind of fits into the mix. It's just readying your data and having a source of truth, both marketplaces and on your Shopify store. So I think this has been very educational for me, and I'm hoping those that are watching or listening also enjoy that. So once again, thank you, Morten, for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much, Steve. I really enjoyed this. And,
all right.
Have a wonderful Europe trip.
Thank you so much. All right. Have yourself a great day.
You too. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.